Good evening, everyone. Can I get your attention? I know we're having some great conversation, dinner conversation. I'm Don Villar, Secretary-Treasurer of the Chicago Federation of Labor. Thank you. On behalf of Bob Ryder, President of the CFL, the 300 local unions and affiliates, and the 500,000 union members they represent, I want to welcome you to our Illinois Labor History Society dinner, Hall of Honors dinner. And this is a special dinner because this is the 50th anniversary for the Illinois Labor History Society. We have a room full of labor activists and folks in the fight for the movement, but I want to recognize a couple people. I want to recognize Tim Gray, new president of the State Fed, State AFL-CIO, newly elected. Hello, Tim. Great, Tim. Great to have you here tonight, Tim. And Steve Powell, president of 881. He'll be up later this evening. I saw Pat Statter, president of Northeast Illinois Labor Federation. Keith Richardson, president of APWU 0001 Chicago. And there's Larry Thomas, painters. So, thank you all for coming tonight and supporting such a great cause. I also want to recognize our board members. Will the board members of the Illinois Labor History Society, if you get a chance, can you get up? I just want to give you a little recognition. Thank you all for all the work you do in support of and keeping labor history alive in our state. You've often heard us say, Chicago is the hometown of the American labor movement. We have so much labor history here, right? All right, from the Haymarket, down the street from here, to Pullman Town, to the stockyards, the Steelworkers Massacre. Mother Jones emerged from the air. Mother Jones, down from the ashes of the Great Chicago Fire, she emerged from here and was part of the labor movement in Chicago. And then just across the street is Sidney Hillman's home. You know who Sidney Hillman was, right? Sidney Hillman, Amalgamated Clothing Workers Union and confidant to FDR. He is the reason why we have Social Security, Fair Labor Standards, and the National Labor Relations Act. So a lot of great people, a lot of great history from the past that are here in Chicago, that can't come out of Chicago, and we're still creating history today. It takes a lot of hard work, to keep history alive. It takes people like Larry Spivak here to keep our labor history alive, and the members of the Illinois Labor History Society. A couple things. Wanted to promote this poster. Get your 50th anniversary poster today. So we've got the posters in the back there to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Illinois Labor History Society. And one other thing, when you came in, you probably saw a statue, a replica of the Haymarket Martyrs back there. That is a cake that we'll be cutting later on to celebrate the 50th anniversary, 50th year of Illinois labor history. So I want to introduce Larry Spivak, the president of the Illinois Labor History Society. Larry.
Thank you, Don. I don't think I have your chops, so I don't know how you eat dinner and not clink your knives on your plate and all of that, so it's the way it is. We'll get through it together. Greetings, fellow workers.
Greetings.
Oh my God, if I was William McNary, I would say 3 times. Greetings, fellow workers.
Greetings.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being here to celebrate, and happy 50th birthday to the Illinois Labor History Society. I want to say one thing about our MC, Don Villar, which is that he knows labor history and he cares about it, and he is on our board. He was standing when he asked everybody to stand, but that's not why he asked everybody to stand. But I'm just so happy that we've now had this tradition of the Chicago Federation of Labor and the Illinois State Federation of Labor participating on the board of the Illinois Labor History Society. So, how is it possible to summarize 50 years of keeping labor history alive in just 5 minutes? I guess I won't take 5 minutes, I'm going to take longer. Not much longer. So I'm so proud to be standing here in the presence of so many individuals who have dedicated significant portions of their life to the cause of building and defending one of the most important institutions in these United States. Our labor movement is better because all of you, thank you. And thank you to our honorees, past and present, many who stand in legacy with us, even though they have been long gone and passed on. And thank you to all LHS board members, past and present, who have made it such a great organization. I also want to thank our keynote speaker tonight, Alyssa McBride, for coming from Washington, D.C., Secretary Treasurer of AFSCME. It is so gracious of our National Union of AFSCME to have her come here. I will say that AFSCME has been such a great supporter of the idea of preserving, honoring, and telling the story of labor history, as many other unions here in Chicago do. I am pretty much a broken record when I make labor history presentations. I often make the same statement over and over about how labor history is the story of America. It's the story of all of us. It's about love, it's about hate, it's about race and class, gender and ethnicity, and sometimes religion, and of course, the struggle between capital and labor. I often refer to certain places and events that encapsulate this notion. A good example is Pullman. As we move forward to 2020, much progress has been made and continues to be made to bring the vision of the National Park Service, the State of Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Illinois Labor History, along with other allies, together to restore the physical space and interpret the history of this amazing story. Before I say more key elements of our labor history, I want to take a moment to remember 3 individuals who passed away this year. First, I want to recognize a great artist whose body of work integrated the story of working people and politics into a unique aesthetic. Her name is Peggy Lipschitz. She left us, yes, Peggy, those of you know who Peggy. She left us at the early age of 100. Her chalk talks were legendary in labor, peace, and social justice circles. There was always a social content in her drawings and paintings. The intersection of art, music, and politics is a powerful tool and an awesome catalyst in movement building. I believe that the legacy of this profound woman is to teach us that movement building doesn't just come from talking, but must incorporate all facets of human creativity. Second, I want to recognize a past inductee into the ILHS Union Hall of Honor. Her name is Betty Balinoff. Many of you know her son, Tom Balinoff, president of SEIU Local 1. I don't know if Tom made it or not. Tom, are you here? Not yet. Dr. Betty Balinoff's importance to the labor movement came in a myriad of ways. She may be best remembered for her landmark labor oral history project, where she interviewed over 70 labor leaders and rank-and-file activists during the 1970s and 1980s. The archives of these interviews are available digitally. You can read more about her in the ILHS newsletter that was just mailed out this week. Finally, in the same newsletter, you can read about another important artist and creator of many things, Mark Rogovin, also an inductee into our Union Hall of Honor. While I met Mark nearly 30 years ago upon a visit to the Peace Museum that he founded, we became friends as we worked together on the ongoing project of maintaining and telling the story of Haymarket Martyrs Monument in Forest Park. Mark was the ILHS's chief steward, if you will, of that monument. Mark looked after it. And Mark's authorship of the book, The Day Will Come, serves as a very special resource for visitors from all over the world in telling the stories of scores of people who are laid to rest near the martyrs' gravesite. For those of you who may not be aware, the Illinois Labor History Society is the deed holder of the Martyrs Monument, the world's most sacred labor site. Do we have a chance to show the short piece, Stephanie? Stephanie? The legacy, the memories. Just a very short video here of the people we just mentioned. Can we just have one moment of silence to honor these unique, incredible contributors to social change and a better quality of life for all people? Just one moment. Thank you. Well, I want to say something about Mark Rogovin. Mark Rogovin's service to the Illinois Labor History Society as a consummate volunteer regarding his tireless and passionate work in keeping history alive has inspired us to create a Volunteer of the Year award. Now, I think some people on the back table, hey Sarah, I think somebody needs to pay attention to this moment. She knows what I'm saying. This year's awardee, our first awardee, is a woman who helped thousands learn the story of labor. Her focus and research are impeccable and gets presented every day in a couple of ways. She writes a daily 2-minute podcast called Labor in Two, which is presented every day on Facebook. I hope some of you look at it. I hope you look every day at it. Those of you who listen to the Rick Smith radio show and hear him read the 2 minutes labor history lesson are hearing the research and writing of Julia Berkowitz. Julia is an active member of the IBEW 134 and works full-time for the CTA. We all scratch our heads at the ILHS and wonder aloud, how does she do it? Julia, because of your dedication to helping tell labor's story each and every day, we present you with this award, and that's right, you're coming up here to accept this award. It is the ILHS Volunteer, the Mark Rogovin Volunteer of the Year, Julia Berkowitz. The stuff she does for us as a volunteer is just so unbelievable. You know, the writing, the research, helping put our books together, and then working, you know, literally a full day on her underpaid and overworked. Well, no, wait, it's a union job. She's not underpaid. Julia, we present you with this award, the Mark Rogovin Volunteer of the Year, for exemplifying the spirit of Mark by showing unselfish and dedicated service to our organization. Congratulations. Oh. I know. Okay, a little more about labor history. Even though I would love to stand up here and describe the numerous projects the Illinois labor history has been engaged in over the last 50 years, I suppose it would take more than begging your indulgence, right? I am therefore going to highlight one particular project that I believe encapsulates the story of America and the labor movement. With the historical resources provided by the Illinois Labor History Society, in addition to many others, especially the work of Bill Edelman, many of whom you know and took tours with him or in classes, and of course our longtime president and one of the founders, along with Bill Edelman, Les O'Rear. In the early 1980s, along with very significant financial support from over 40 unions. This is a big deal and something that we haven't seen since, I don't think. Filmmaker Elsa Rosbach was able to make the award-winning movie, The Killing Floor. Elsa, who is here tonight, Elsa, raise your hand. Elsa lives in Germany, by the way, and she came here for the recent screening, which I'll talk about. Elsa labored for several years working to get this film off the ground. I am sure Elsa will be happy to tell you more about this important film. It was shown on PBS in 1984. In 1985, it won the Sundance Film Festival Special Jury Award. It is a dramatic presentation of the true story of how a group of black and white slaughterhouse workers attempted to break race barriers to build an interracial union for the first time in the brutal stockyards. And those of you who know labor history know that the organizing to the United Packing House Workers of America and the United Packing House Organizing Committee were so fundamental in helping to bridge the racial gap and create racial unity so that power could come to those who worked in the stockyards and spread all across America, not just in the stockyards, but in industry after industry. 2 weeks ago, the restored 4K version of the film was screened at the Gene Siskel Film Center for 1 week, and the Illinois Labor History Society hosted one of the nights. 2 months earlier, the film was screened on the south side of Chicago with over 120 people attending, and many turned away. There are flyers. Where's my flyer? Most of you have a flyer on your table, front and back, and it's available. This film is available, or will be available, this summer in DVD and Blu-ray, but it's also available to rent in other formats that Elsa can talk to you about. So the fundamental nature of this film is something that can help educate members and activists about a very significant part of America's heritage. I'm just curious, and I won't be surprised. Raise your hand if you knew that this film was screened 2 weeks ago over 8 days at the Gene Siskel Film Center. There are, a handful of you. This reminds me, of course, when I make a labor history presentation at a university class, and I ask people, what holiday is the secular holiday is one of the most celebrated holidays on the planet that is because of the events in Chicago of May 4th, 1886. And about the same number of people raised their hand, about 3% of the audience. So this is why this is so important. If you see this film, you will be able to help tell the story of America in so many facets in the fight for justice. But now, I just want to we have a short trailer. We may need, again, this time I will beg your indulgence because we don't have a direct audio feed. It didn't work earlier for whatever reason. And so we're going to do our best. And this short trailer is something that you can actually look at. This is the 4K restored version of the trailer of this most important film.
Why don't we say it like this? The Lord has seen fit to reward me with a position at the Chicago Stockyards.
Yes, ma'am. It's straight and simple, boys. We want everybody to join the union.
Mister, I come up here to make a living. I ain't getting in no white man's fight, no, sir.
Now get back to work, all of you.
You do whatever the boss says, don't you, boy?
Here you ain't seen me in a whole year. You didn't bring me no flowers or nothing. But I guess that's what Chicago do to folks.
A lot of Irish gangs all up and through here. So you gotta be careful how you step.
See, there are all kinds of butchers. The stickers do like this.
Days of peasants and serfs and slaves must be behind us. Now we're Americans now. Polish, Irish, colored, whatever you are. Let us be 100% union. You're just like one of them cows, eh? Going to the slaughter, because the white man leads him to it.
How y'all colored folks doing?
How you doing, white boy?
They're gonna keep pushing us until we start killing each other.
Coloreds will be brought in by the militia tomorrow.
You gonna herd the coloreds into the yards like a bunch of cattle?
We was making progress up here. Now there's nothing but fire and smoke. I didn't ride that boxcar all the way up here to be the same as I left. I was nothing when I come up here. But I ain't gonna say nothing.
Tomorrow, where you gonna be?
Me and the union gonna be outside the damn slaughterhouse trying to keep those people from coming in to kill the coloreds.
This was edited by our distributor, and it even plays in the movie theaters like the Siskel, and it's a great little 1.5 minute summary of the film. But just to see what happened is you saw, it's about Damian Leake plays a true character, Frank Custer, who comes up from the South, a true character that we found in research, working with Illinois Labor History Society and so forth. Found him, and he came up to the Chicago from the South, gets a job in the stockyards. The white guy you saw is the union organizer, and he's saying, we want all the blacks also to join the union. And he says at first, our main character, well, I just came up here to go money, I'm not getting into any white man's fight. But he gets drawn into the Union, but some of his friends from the South, Moses Gunn plays Heavy Williams. His name was actually Heavy. They are opposed the Union, and so Frank is caught between his belief in the Union, which is in fact trying to fight racism, but is white-led still, and that what to do, and his friends turn against him primarily when the race riot occurs, and the management uses the conflict in the workforce to defeat the Union. And it's a very important story, and at the end you see how Frank decides to go with the black workers back in. The white workers get all the white workers to leave the yards to prevent violence that they thought would happen after the race riot. And Frank decides and finds one person, a young black man, who's going to follow him. So this is the precursor, the ground story before the packing house workers did what they did to overcome racism in America through the Union movement to a large extent, going right through the tradition. Martin Luther King, we all know he was killed when speaking with striking workers. So this film is central to American history. It's never before, you can say, why wasn't it out? It went right to television. It was on television, the only film ever shown on US television with 40 unions supporting it. It was done all under union labor. It was done with the Teamsters as well as the IATSE, SAG, all the AFL-CIO unions in the entertainment industry. They believed in it so much when we shot it in 1983 that they worked, and all of the unions, including the Teamsters, agreed to work for half of normal union minimum and deferred the rest. We haven't been able to pay that back yet because when it went to TV, it didn't make money, of course. Now it's out there. See it for the history, promote it, just ask your theater to show it, get people to do events with it, and let people know when the DVD and Blu-ray comes out. It's all coming back to our union brothers and sisters who helped make this happen. Thank you.
I believe that this film will serve you and your members a great insight into the dynamics of the role of history in helping us to do better. Hopefully this film will be seen again in theaters throughout the United States. And as we look back over the last 50 years, it is clear that the intersection of art, music, film, theater, and union organizing and collective bargaining makes us a better country. The story of the killing floor is the story of America. It's the story of all of us. Let me conclude with this. Few institutions in America serve to mediate the race, gender, ethnic, and class conflicts as significantly as labor does. After all, most of us work a lifetime with other people, and the role of unions, especially in the 20th century, have taught millions of us to learn that each and every one of us deserves to be treated equally and with dignity and respect. So let us go forward and tell our story for the next 50 years. Joe Hill, Lucy Parsons, Mother Jones, A. Philip Randolph, the Haymarket Martyrs, victims of the Cherry Mine disaster and the 1919 race riots, and so many others demand that we do so. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of all of us at the Illinois Labor History Society, for supporting us, and let's look forward to another 50 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. You know, we continue to make history today, right? How many people here were on the picket line with our CTU and SEIU 70 brothers and sisters? That's right. We made history, right? And how many of you folks here stopped by the UAW picket lines out in the suburbs? So labor history is about the fight. And we're always taking the fight to the streets. But part of the fight also includes, you know, the fight in courts, fight in the courthouses, fight in the ballot boxes. And That's the other fight. And that's a fight that actually one of our unions, has been on the front lines of a lot of those fights. And one of those, especially locally here. I mean, we took it on the chin last year with Janice. Oh, yeah. And that, Bruce Crowder, who we sent packing, thanks to everybody in this room. He wanted Janice. He rallied Janice because he wanted to take on one of our unions, one of our public sector unions, AFSCME. AFSCME. Our brothers and sisters in AFSCME over here. We all know the statistics, right? Private sector union density is less than 7%. But we're strong in the public sector. And we're strong in the public sector because of AFSCME, because of all our public sector unions. And because of that success, big business, the rich, the powerful, these anti-union forces, who they went after? They went after AFSCME. They went after public sector. They attacked us. But and after that Supreme Court decision last year, boy, that decision, boo. Man, that shouldn't have gotten that way. We should have had that seat. We should have had the Supreme Court seat, right? But we didn't. AFSCME, they rolled up their sleeves. Instead of retreating from that fight, they got back in and they organized. And our keynote speaker tonight, AFSCME Secretary Treasurer Alyssa McBride. She's been leading that fight. She's an organizer at heart. She's been organizing and empowering workers since the 90s. She knows what it takes to win. She's organized factories in New England, Ohio, and in the Deep South. Right to work, Deep South. Yeah. The tools to her success has been communications, especially that one-on-one. When you talk to that member or that potential member, and convince them why the labor movement's so important to changing their lot in life. And then building that workplace power and solidarity. Those are the tools. And then the other part of it is putting the heat on the street when we get our allies in activism right. She has grown an army of activists, organizers, and labor leaders at AFSCME, and we need more of them. We need more of them to keep the labor movement going. And the fight against the power against us, big money corporations and those anti-union politicians, it never ends. I mean, we've been fighting them since Haymarket. Well, since the start, 150 years ago, right? We've been fighting them. We continue to fight. And thank God for our sister McBride and AFSCME for keeping up that fight. And everybody in this room, you haven't retreated. You're still in the fight. So it is my honor to introduce our keynote speaker tonight, AFSCME Secretary Treasurer Alyssa McBride. Oh, no, it's all good.
Wow. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you for this incredible celebration of Illinois labor history. I'm really grateful to be here to celebrate your 50th anniversary. I'm honored to be here as the Secretary Treasurer representing many of the incredible working people who are part of AFSCME in this room, as well as all of our sisters and brothers. And I really am pleased to be able to join you because Larry Spivak asked. And Larry Spivak has done so many things for so many of us. I really wanted to be here with all of you and with him. And I'm going to show you a few pictures and tell you a few stories and keep it short and sweet because you got a lot of other folks to hear from. So let me start by saying that Larry was really generous with his time about 13 or 14 years ago when a group of us were in Chicago for an AFSCME convention, and he took us to see some of the sites that you all have really preserved in terms of Chicago labor history. And so the first couple of photos are of our group with Larry. I think he actually took the photos, so he's not in them. You'll recognize the places he took us. You can show the next one. And you'll recognize the spirit that Larry really brought as he brings to every opportunity to teach labor history. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see something that I learned about from Larry, which is the Haymarket handbills. And what's special about this photo is that these are two of the original handbills, and they were actually found in the stacks at the Library of Congress by an AFSCME steward who works there. And, and so I knew what they were because I learned it from Larry. And I went to the presentation that this steward made. His name is David Fernandez Barrial. He's an AFSCME brother in the fight. And he did his own research on the Haymarket tragedy. And so in the picture, you can see that one of the handbills is the one that was given out, but the other one is the one that was used as evidence against the Haymarket martyrs, because it includes that line about working people arming themselves. And so David told the story to his co-workers and colleagues at the Library of Congress. And now the handbills are part of the rare manuscripts collection at the library. It's a proud AFSCME shop. If you come to DC, go visit it. And we've got a video where you can do a virtual tour of the Library of Congress with David on our AFSCME website. So they're preserving some of your history and some of our history there. So let's go to the next slide. There you are, all of the AFSCME and CTU sisters and brothers, because I want to honor this moment. It's the end of 2019, which was a momentous year in the labor movement here and all over the country. It was the first full year, as the brother said, that we lived with right to work in the public sector, brought to us by Mark Janus. It was also the first full year of retirement for Mark Janus. Did anybody know that? He retired from his state job, but he immediately went to work for the Illinois Policy Institute, which is funded with far-right cash. So now he's pulling down fat salary from corporate America, as well as his amazing AFSCME pension, which was fought for by the people in the room and which he did not support, but he's still drawing that pension. 2019 was the year that you sent Bruce Rauner packing. Let's hear it for that. And you brought in a pro-worker governor who is standing with you. And it was also the year that the Chicago teachers went on strike and, as their president said, moved the needle on educational justice in the city. And it was the year that Illinois state workers finally got a union contract after years. Stand up if you work for the state of Illinois. Let's hear it for all of you for fighting and persevering. Stand up, Illinois state workers. Stand up, Illinois state workers. Thank you for carrying the fight for all of us for those many years, and congratulations on your contract. Now I just want to tell a couple of stories from our union's past, because they're stories that still matter to us today. So the first is a story that starts here in Chicago, if we can go to the next slide, and ends in New York. I don't know if any of you know this sister. Does anyone know who the woman in the photo is? It's Lillian Roberts. And she was an organizer here in Chicago in the 50s and 60s. She started working in a hospital at the age of 14, and she became a union member at the age of 19 at the Chicago Lying-In Clinic. And she helped organize workers in the state with our union and then moved to New York. And what was special about her work there is that she was part of creating citywide bargaining for AFSCME members in the city of New York. Citywide bargaining means more power and better working conditions for working folks. And she also fought really hard for career ladders for healthcare workers so that aides could become LPNs, and LPNs could become RNs. She's from the south side of Chicago. She is still with us. If you go to the next photo, she's 94 years old, and she's still organizing. And she got her start here in this city and as an AFSCME sister. The next couple of slides show you some work we did last year to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the sanitation workers' strike, which many of you know was an AFSCME strike. And this is a photo of Bill Lucy, who was the Secretary-Treasurer of AFSCME for many years. And he's telling the story of that strike to a packed hall at the Mason Temple, which is where Dr. King gave the mountaintop speech. And Bill Lucy was an organizer on that strike. So he knew the story, he told the story, and if you go to the next slide, you'll see the event we did that night, which was a commemoration of that mountaintop speech. And there's a photo of some of the surviving strikers. I believe that's the next one. These are 5 gentlemen who walked those picket lines. And they were part of that fight all the way to the end, where they won a voice on the job and a seat at the table, because that's what they were fighting for. They were fighting for the right to organize a union. They were fighting for the right to negotiate a contract. And by the way, that fight is not over, because in most states in this country, public service, public sector workers do not have the right to organize. Most child care providers, most independent providers of services don't have the right to organize. Many agricultural workers don't have the right to organize. So that fight that these gentlemen waged is still on for the rest of us in this country. So last, I'll show you the final day of that event in Memphis when we were commemorating the mountaintop speech that Dr. King gave. AFSCME's President Lee Saunders said, we need to make this not just a commemoration, but a call to action. And the next day we heeded that call by marching in the streets of Memphis. Maybe some of you were there. Were any of you in Memphis last year? There's a few. So we showed that the fight is not over. And we're continuing to do the work of remembering that strike. There's a wonderful documentary called At the River I Stand, which you can show as a way of educating folks about that fight. So the final photo, actually we should skip on one more. I want to end with history that is being made right now. And this is a photo of Crystal Gardner. Crystal is a behavioral health care worker here in Chicago. And she does one of the hardest jobs there is, taking care of at-risk teens and really strengthening their mental health, which is not an easy job. But she's also done one of the hardest jobs of a union activist, which is to stand up to the boss and form a union for the first time where none exists. She was the leader. She was one of the leaders of that fight. And last year I had the opportunity to interview Crystal for Facebook Live, and she showed up for the interview dressed literally as a warrior. She was in full Wakanda makeup because she'd come from a dance performance that she managed to squeeze in on the same day. And it made me think about the fact that you have to be a warrior to form a union in this country. It's not right, but it's the reality. You have to be a warrior. So thank goodness for warriors like Crystal Gardner. Thank goodness for warriors like all of you. Because just like those sanitation workers did in Memphis, just like Lillian Roberts did in Illinois and New York, just like Crystal Gardner and her co-workers are doing right now, you are writing the history of our movement through your actions. We have got to keep the labor movement alive by organizing, organizing, organizing. So I congratulate you on your 50th anniversary. I commend your commitment to the fight, both back in history and going forward into the future, and I commit to stand with you on the front lines of the fight to organize the labor movement and to organize those who want to join with us to fight for a better life for all workers in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister McBride. That was great. Those moving words. You know, we organize, we fight, we don't give up. That's the history of the movement. And now we're going to the final part of the night, recognizing some of our great labor leaders, the induction into the Hall of Honors, the Labor Hall of Honors. So we'll start with our first Hall of Honoree. I'd like to bring up Alma Washington. Thank you. You may have seen Alma on stage or screen, a member of SAG-AFTRA and Actors Equity. She has a long body of work in town. She's also a member of the ILHS board. And, you know, Alma is here. She'll be inducting our first honoree, Irene Goins. And accepting the honor will be the Working Women's History Project.
Yes, I am a proud member, a board member of the Illinois Labor History Society and also of the Working Women's Project. And I'm here today because I was invited, and when they first mentioned it to me, I thought, oh, I don't know, let's try to get somebody else. So, but then it occurred to me what a privilege it is. So it's an honor for me to induct Irene McCoy Goins into the Illinois Labor History Society of the Union Hall of Honor. But I was thinking, isn't it tragic how women, particular women of color, are often overlooked by history? It's as though they didn't even exist. And a good example is Irene Goins. She was a leading club lady, a member of the Women's Trade Union League, and many other organizations, as you can see in the bio, and she was an activist. She campaigned for the 8-hour day, and she was a prestigious speaker. When the CFL, the Chicago Federation of Labor, when they were recruiting members, and they needed someone to appeal to the stockyard workers, it was Irene they called on, and rightly so, because she not only spoke for them, she spoke for many groups, including the Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters. But I'm a bit ashamed to admit that I did not know who Irene was, but I thought there should be some connection with us. So Sarah Joy sent me her, not just her bio, but her obituary. And in the obituary, it said when she passed away, they had her service at Quinn Chapel. And if you're an African American person affiliated with any church or not, you know Quinn Chapel. So that was my connection to her. But it's up to all of us to ensure that history reflects the pioneering efforts of forgotten women like Irene and connect them to our struggles of today, because there is a connection. Thank you.
Very well put. Okay, the challenge of the vertically challenged. My name is Amy Lakin. I'm president of Working Women's History Project, so good evening. Irene Goins made significant contributions in the areas of labor, civil, and women's rights, as Alma just delineated. Now that she is being inducted into the Union Hall of Honor, fortunately, more people will know about her accomplishments. Irene Goins clearly understood the significance of working across racial and class lines. She knew the power of solidarity. So on behalf of the late Irene Goins and on behalf of Working Women's History Project that preserves stories like hers, we want to thank the Illinois Labor History Society for giving Irene Goins the recognition she so richly deserves. Thanks a lot.
That would be nice. Oh, I should turn it around, shouldn't I? Sorry about that.
Thank you, Alma. Thank you. Katie, Jordan, can you please come on up? You know, Chicago is not just the home of the American labor movement, but it's the home of amazing, trailblazing, glass-shattering labor leaders like Katie Jordan right here. President of the Coalition for Labor Union Women. Katie will induct our next honoree, Congressman, the late Congressman Charles Hayes, and accepting the honor will be Dr. Phyllis Hayes, his niece. Katie.
You know, as a young union person just joining the unions, I had lots of dreams about what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do in the labor movement. One of the dreams that I never thought of, that I would even be considered to even be asked to induct someone like Charlie Hayes into the Union Hall of Honor. You know, Charlie was a great person with a great heart. And before I let you know anything else about Charlie, I want you to know that he was my neighbor. And I felt honored to live next door almost with someone like a Charlie Hayes. Charlie Hayes was the first, and I think he led that fight, and since then we've had other opportunities for African Americans and union people to serve in the House of Congress, to represent working people. And I remember going to Washington at least once a year. And you didn't go to Washington unless you walked down those halls and went to see Charlie Hayes. And Charlie Hayes would have some great stories to tell about his experience in Washington. And every time he would walk through the halls, all the other representatives would say, "Here comes that union man." And Charlie had a way of dealing with that, and he would say, "Yes, yes, yes." In other words, owning, "Yes, I am that union man." And he certainly proved that out. And if you read in the story of Charlie Hayes, when he was working as a union person, Charlie Hayes led many fights within the union. He even led the fight for us to even gain the Civil Rights Act. You know, he worked to see that we had the first African American mayor in the city of Chicago. He worked to see that we had organized the first African American organization to make sure that the African American community had a chance to have his voice heard in these United States of America, and that was the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. Charlie Hayes was representative of all people, not just those in the high echelon, but the little people are the ones that Charlie really felt close to Charlie was a family man himself. He knew what it was like to raise children. He wasn't born with a silver platter sitting at his table. And he proved that through all of his work that he did while he was on earth. Those of you who even know about the Charlie Hayes Center, where it is one of our labor history spots that we visit when you want to come and go on a labor tour here in the city of Chicago. We all know, and if you don't, I'll tell you about her, the great Reverend Addie White. Charlie Hayes was a mentor to the Reverend Addie White, and Charlie Hayes was one of her greatest supporters when she became the first African American vice president in her union. So today it is a great honor for me to be able to stand here and say that I truly, at this point, induct our brother Charlie Hayes into the Union Hall of Honor and have our sister, his niece, Dr. Phyllis Hayes, to accept this honor.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm teary-eyed a little bit, so I'm gonna, suck it up. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the nominating committee of the Illinois Labor History Society, who selected my uncle to receive this prestigious award as you commemorate your 50th year of this wonderful organization. What an amazing honor for Congressman Charles Arthur Hayes, who was born into a struggling poor family in 1918 in a little small town called Cairo, Illinois. Any of you ever heard of it? Yeah, that's where we from. As a matter of fact, my family didn't get an outhouse until 1983 when we had to go down and tell my great aunt, it's time for you to be able to use a washroom in the house. So, and indeed, again, it's a blessing to be recognized by your peers in such a rewarding manner. And it is my belief that Uncle Charles would have been grateful to receive this award, for as you can see, he was a hard worker. My name is Dr. Phyllis Hayes, an educator of 42 years, currently working for the University of Illinois. And I am the niece of the Honorable Congressman Charles Arthur Hayes. And it is my belief that the path that he walked along was one that he led for his family, the future leaders, and labor, because I too was born and raised in labor, was a labor leader with Chicago Public Schools. Every place I went, they made me the union chair. I said, I don't want to be a union chair. They said, you have no choice. I didn't run for it, you got it. So I learned about labor early in life. Within Uncle Charles, when he was working, right after he got out of high school, he was working in a factory. And he was tired of the working conditions which he and others had to endure. With his vision to make things better for others, such as the opportunity to receive a break, go to the washroom, adequate health care benefits, sound like things we're still fighting for today, he was approached by others to help organize Local 1424, the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America. And it was at that time that we believe his journey truly began. As a child growing up with my father, Harold L. Hayes, one of Uncle Charles's younger brothers, he would tell us the story of how Uncle Charles was thrown into jail many times with his efforts to open doors and change the trajectory of racism, poverty, unemployment, voter rights, civil rights, education, inequality, the digital divide, much more. Many times we were waking as children in the middle of the night, and we had to drive in and around the state of Illinois to go fetch Uncle Charles out of jail, as my parents would say. And back in those days, you didn't leave children at home, so everybody in the house had to get up and understand what this right was about. So can you imagine growing up in a family where, when I was 5 years old, I worked on my first campaign as my father, my mother, my siblings, and I joined Uncle Charles and other labor leaders as we knocked on doors to educate and empower other Negroes, as we were known back then, to vote for President John F. Kennedy. While I was in high school, I remember telling Uncle Charles, "Why are you always going someplace? Why are you never home?" His response was, "We have work to do for the rights of all people, and our work is never done." On the night of April 12, 1983, I was riding up the elevator of the Palmer House with Uncle Charles and our newly elected first African-American mayor of Chicago, Harold Washington. And before we arrived to the ballroom and the door opened of the elevator, I turned to both of them and I said, "This is great. This has been an exciting campaign. I think I'd like to follow in your footsteps and become a legislator." And at that time, before the door opened, they both turned and reprimanded me and said, "No, you're an educator. We need you to run your path. We need you to stay where you are so that we can continue to educate and graduate more people to lead the next generation." So I stand here today, thankful to accept this award on his behalf. And he was a man of integrity who made a difference in society just because he cared. As an educator, I was truly elated when Uncle Charles authored the School Improvement Act of 1987, which allocated millions of dollars to Chicago public schools and schools around our nation. This bill truly impacted our school systems because it afforded access for our students to be introduced to the world of technology. The classroom had changed at that moment, and funding had come to light of funding that he lobbied for. Yes, that man that they said, "Here comes that man." He lobbied because he knew that the world was getting ready to change with the influx of technology. And when I went to college in 1973, I then realized how blessed my family was, because I thought everybody grew up like us. I thought everybody worked on campaigns. I thought everybody knocked on doors. I thought everybody did that. And due to Uncle Charles and his willingness to help us, to change us, to include us, here I stand today. His civil rights movement impacted us and impacted many. Imagine watching him serve as one of the founding members of Operation Push and working with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which was one of my highlights of his memories. To my family who has joined me tonight, my sister Sheila, brother-in-law Nat, my nephew Brian, his lovely fiancée, Latrice. We come tonight, and I'm gonna tell you, thank you, Stephanie, because Stephanie had to find me. She had to find me because I work in government relations for the University of Illinois. I'm working for the rights of students of color. I've created several programs over my career, and I'm always gone. But next year I'll be 65, and I'm looking at, I'm gonna settle down a little bit and chill out. But I say thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to those of you who have led the way for us. Miss Stephanie, again, I thank you for finding me, because she called me, she emailed me, she put out APB out at the Hayes Center. Do y'all know anybody in the Hayes family? And so thank you. And so once again, on behalf of my uncle, I appreciate each of you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Miss Katie. Oh, one more? Oh, okay, Miss Katie, she said one more. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Miss Katie. Thank you.
That was such a great speech. Thank you. I'd like to ask Keith Richardson, please come up. Keith is the president of APWU, Chicago Local 0001. He's a labor leader who really takes it to the streets. Whenever there's a rally, a picket, or a march, he's always there. He's one of these rare folks who always shows up. He's there when the fight's not even for the APWU. When it's some other union, he is always there. So Keith's here to introduce our next honoree, Robert Simpson.
Good evening. As Don said, my name is Keith Richardson. I'm the president of the American Postal Workers Union, Chicago Local 1. And this is like it's a homecoming for me for Teamster City because I'm the son of a proud Teamster woman, Betty Richardson. She was a mentee of the person that I'm about to induct, Brother Simpson. As a child, I used to come here holding my mom's hand at the union meetings, and Bob was the president, one of the founding members of Local 743. This man means a lot to me and has done a lot for my family and others. People standing up here today telling their ages. The young lady said she's going to be 65. Can you believe that Bob has been in the labor movement for 67 years? And he's still going strong today. 67 years since he came from Southern Illinois, Carbondale, working Montgomery wards, and when he helped start Local 743, he's done many of things throughout his career. He's the current president of the Chicago Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. He sits on the National Executive Board of the CBTU as its Secretary Treasurer. He has worn many hats, and he has opened a lot of doors for many of people. A lot of the people who you've heard about today, Congressman Charlie Hayes, Addie Wyatt, among others, Katie Jordan, Bob has either mentored them, counseled them, marched with them, worked with them, or pat them on the back or gave them a scolding when needed. This man is and walks labor. He is what he says, and if you have a minute to read the bio, everything is true. I am so proud to stand here tonight because, again, I don't want to come make a speech. If you look at the past inductees of who's a part of this hall, you think of the names: A. Philip Randolph, Eugene Debs, Jacqueline Vaughn, Paul Robeson, Studs Turkle, Mother Jones, Les O'Rear, Regina Polk, Addie Wyatt, B. Lumpkin, she has a few decades on you, by the way, and Katie Jordan. I am pleased and honored to welcome my friend, my mentor, Robert Simpson, into the Union Hall of Honor for the Illinois Labor History Society.
Good evening. Keith really left me nothing to talk about because he covered just about everything. But I want to thank the Illinois Labor History Society, the committee, for choosing me and giving me this award. I started this ride in January of 1963. And I want you to know it's been a hell of a ride. There's not too many things that I haven't experienced as a union rep. I experienced a lot of things, and look, I don't hide from it. There were some racial issues that we run into, and we're still not through fighting those. In fact, within the Teamsters, that's what led me in 1971 to form the National Black Caucus of the Teamsters, because we were not being treated fair. They were using us And I wanted to make it clear that we wasn't going to take it. We wanted to be recognized. We wanted a seat at the table. And we wanted to be put into policy-making position within the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. As I say, I started this ride in 1963. I was working in Montgomery wards when the president of the union called me into the office and said he wanted to talk to me. And that's when he told me he wanted me to come on the staff as a board member and as an organizer. I worked as an organizer for about a year, and I was so successful in organizing people, this next year I was made the director of organizing. When I started with the local, we had about 13,000 members. We got the union up damn near to 40,000 members at one time. We got involved in the organizing of hospital workers, which was unheard of at the time. We went into a field where there was no laws, nothing that protect the workers. We didn't have the NLRB. We basically just had a lot of hard work, and with a good law firm that was with us, we were able to get some things done, and we started the Hospital Employees Labor Program, HELP, which organized many thousand workers in the city of Chicago. I guess you wonder, when did I ever have time to do servicing as a business agent, handle arbitrations, and do all of the other things that business agents do and union reps did? Well, it wasn't an 8-hour job, number one. Many a nights, I was out in the streets. Many a night, I was at the bargaining table. Many a night, I was going into places, knocking on doors, making house calls, that we got people that wouldn't do that today. But we did it. We didn't have social media like you have right now. We had to do it the hard way, by getting out in the streets at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and catching people while they were going to work, and then go and make house calls on people after they got off from work. It was a lot of work, a lot of hard work, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. There's a lot of things I could have considered doing when I was growing up, but the experience and the things that I really became involved with and the things that I did, I don't think I could have gotten that experience or that knowledge from any other job outside of what I was doing as a union representative. As I say, the ride started in 1963, and I want you to know it's been a hell of a ride. Thank you.
I'd like to invite Steve Powell to come on up. You know, Steve leads one of the largest locals in Illinois, UFCW Local 881. 34,000 members strong throughout the state and Northwest Indiana. You know, 881 has been behind a number of important legislation in the city and the state. Yeah, and they've improved the lives of so many people, not just 881 members, but other union members and workers across the state of Illinois. Steve's also the international vice president, and he was elected to president of Local 881 earlier this year, succeeding his father, Ronald Powell, our final honoree of the evening. Steve.
Thank you, Don. Before I introduce my father, I'd like to recognize Tim Dre, the president, newly elected president of the Illinois State AFL. Stand up, Tim. Congratulations. To Sister McBride, I've had the opportunity of hearing one of your predecessors, Mr. Lucy, on many occasions. Not only here in Chicago, but in DC and across the country. And Bill's saying was, the dinner should end the same day it begins. Right? For all the Ask Me brothers and sisters out there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So, let me talk about my father for a minute. Just about a year ago, he retired. After 57 and a half years of representing working families, and serving Local 881. Shortly thereafter, our executive board unanimously passed a resolution, the first in history, to bestow a title upon him as President Emeritus. And if you didn't know, the word emeritus in Latin originally means, quote, the veteran soldier, unquote. In Ron's case, this is very fitting and deserving honor. He's a veteran of serving our membership and has fought for our union and the advancement of the labor movement for more than half a century. Both Ron and the Illinois Labor History Society share a similar timeline of service to the labor movement. And I truly believe that both have a very lasting impact. I want to share a couple of highlights of Ron's career. He's originally from Wisconsin, very humble roots, and he's carried on those values of representing and empowering others in his daily life. He's a veteran, serving in the Army. He went on and served and went to DeKalb, Northern Illinois University. In 1960, he was working at Jewel Tea Food Company in DeKalb, Illinois. It was there where he discovered his passion for worker justice. He led the first and only recognition strike in Jewel Food Store's history. When the strike was over, he left Jewel and followed his calling to help give a voice to other workers by joining the union staff as a field representative. Over the years, he moved up through various leadership positions within the union and ultimately was elected president of Local 881 in 1983. And of course, Ron has been the longest serving officer in Local 881's history. He's also the longest serving vice president, most senior currently, of the Illinois State AFL-CIO in their modern era. He was also the longest serving international vice president of the UFCW International Union. Over the years, Ron has been a fierce advocate for Local 881 members and has gone to the mat for them when they face their employers. I'll give you one example. In 1984, right after he took over the presidency, he faced his first major test with Jewel Food Store when they came in and unilaterally cut the wages of all of our members. He didn't back down, he fought with integrity, and ultimately winning the restoration of the wage rates and back pay for almost 15,000 members. He's been a national leader in the battle against non-union retailers such as Walmart, that they have undercut the wages and working conditions of our members throughout not only this state, but throughout the nation. He's never been one to back down from a fight, especially where the livelihoods of our members were concerned. Under his leadership, 881 delayed the entry of Walmart into the city of Chicago limits for many years. Part of that campaign, if you recall, was the Big Box Living Wage Ordinance. It was passed by the City Council, and it was the only veto that Mayor Richard M. Daley ever executed in his entire mayoralship. Historic. Throughout his career, he's always understood the importance of legislation and political activism. Key priorities have been supporting candidates who put the interests of working families first and helping to craft legislation that improves the lives of workers and their families or blocks efforts to harm them. He supported and endorsed and championed progressive leaders throughout his career, including the current governor, J.B. Pritzker, to President Barack Obama, Senators Duckworth and Durbin, and countless other members of Congress and state representatives and state senators. Many are very proud to call Ron a friend. Over the years, he's never forgotten his humble roots and the lesson he has learned. Lead by example and make a difference on behalf of your members. His vision, his success, his leadership has been an example not only to me, but our entire staff. I'm humbled to be here today to introduce him and, more importantly, to take the torch that he's created and to carry on the work on making a difference to the members we have the privilege to represent every single day that we wake up. On behalf of my siblings that are here, my sisters Carrie and Kelly and my brother Brad, and more importantly, our staff that have been on this journey with Ron throughout his career. I believe Ron has paved the way for our organization and the labor movement to continue into the future with same unwavering dedication to the people we have the privilege to represent. And it's now my great honor, very humbly, to recognize my father as your new Illinois Labor History 2019 Union Hall of Honor inductee, my father, Ron Powell.
Ron Powell has been a great supporter of the Illinois Labor History Society for many years. Local 881 has always participated in these events, has always contributed in so many ways, and that is one way that and a great reason why we remember Ron, but it's mostly because of his dedication and service for so many years to the labor movement. Ron Powell, you are hereby inducted into the Illinois Union Hall of Honor. Thank you.
That must be my camera.
Hey, Brian, tell your son to keep supporting.
Yeah. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Don. I didn't think anybody had been around longer than I until Bob Simpson came up here and told me. I thought 57 and a half years was a slam dunk, Bob, but damn, you came in the side door and just moved me aside. But that's all right, because you and I go back a long way, and I have a great Bob Simpson story. And some of you I know have heard it in the past. But in 1991, when the government ran the first International Teamsters election down at, I believe it was the Swan, down in Florida, you know, there were delegates from all over the US and Canada, and after a few days of hobnobbing around and electioneering and all of that, the election was held. And guess who was the #1 vote getter in that election run by the government in 1991? Mr. Bob Simpson. Mr. Bob Simpson. And I say that because I first met Bob in the late 80s when I was asked to join the board of directors at Amalgamated Bank, and Bob was already there, and we became friends, and he invited me to that election. And God knows am I glad I went. And Bob, you and I have been friends for ever since. And we got to commend him for all of his work in these later years with the CBTU. Okay? He does a terrific job representing the CBTU and all of the services that the CBTU represents and works within the entire community. And it's not just on the north side or the south side, it's everywhere. And that's a tribute to Bob Simpson. Bob, I'm glad to be here with you. One other recognition I want to make is, and hell, I probably won't even give a speech, but that's probably a good thing. Anyway, I want to recognize Tim Dre as well, because Tim Dre, I don't know if you know it, but Tim Dre was a political director for Local 881 for 12 years before he ran and became Secretary Treasurer of the Illinois State FFL. And I would tell you, he is the very first UFCW person ever to be the president of the Illinois State FFL. And Timmy, we made history yesterday when you were elected. Somebody mentioned earlier the election of J.B. Pritzker and that other asshole who was elected 4 years before him. You know, a year has passed, and the primary election is right around the corner. And I'm told that there's as many as 20 or 25 seats in the General Assembly that's up for re-election. In many of those races, people were appointed for relative short periods of time. Some people decided not to run again. So our mission, labor's mission, labor history's mission, is to make sure that we give Mike Madigan that 71 vote margin to make it impossible so he can nobody can override. And make sure that we elect senators to fill those spots where a couple of our friends have kind of fallen by the wayside. And that happens. Doesn't mean everything is bad. We just have to go out and elect the right people to fill those spots so there's a majority in the Illinois Senate, because we have an opportunity. When I say we, the Illinois Senate has an opportunity in January to make labor history. And that's by electing Kimberly Lightfoot as president of the Illinois Senate. That possibility exists, okay? You're awfully quiet. Damn, I put them to sleep faster than I thought. So anyway, I want to thank the Labor History Society for giving me the opportunity to be here with my colleagues who've already been recognized and for their contributions that they've made to help working men and women, not only across the state of Illinois, but across this nation. When we think of folks like Charlie Hayes, who represented working men and women in Congress, not just for the state of Illinois, but across this nation. And how many, I have a trivia question. How many people remember when you couldn't buy meat at Jewel after 6 o'clock? Not many. Not many. We have to go back to the early 60s when the meat cutters in Chicago took Jewel food stores to the Supreme Court and won the case where they couldn't sell meat after 6. That's the only trivia that I have. It's the only one. And you're probably getting tired of hearing it. But before I leave this stage, I too, as Steve mentioned, I want to recognize the most and the best, the most qualified, the brightest, and hardest working group of people that I ever could have imagined for working with me for so many years. I want the people who have been with me, well, not with me, let me back that up, who've been with the local for over 30 years. Over 30 years, stand up, come on, come on. Don't be bashful, don't be bashful, don't be bashful. And I want you to remain standing for a few minutes. And I want the audience to recognize there's more women than there are guys. How about that? Yeah, we're a trendsetter. We're a trendsetter. We were ahead of the movement. And we continue to be ahead of the movement. Now the people with more than 20 years. Come on, come on. Don't be bashful. Don't be bashful. More than 10. Johnny, get up. Let me say to you publicly, oh boy, this is when it gets tough. What a pleasure it's been for me to work with all of you for all of these years and to have you celebrate this evening here in this historic hall. This hall is historic. You can't imagine how many rallies and stuff that's gone on in this place before. So publicly, thank you all. God bless you. Thank you all in the audience. And thank the Labor History Society. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all of our inductees this evening. And we conclude our events for this evening. We end with Bucky Hawker. Oh, and don't forget there's some cake back there. It looks like they've already started cutting it. But let's wrap up the evening with Bucky Hawker playing right behind me. Okay, why don't you lead us in Solidarity Forever?
All right. All right, I always like to remind people, too, that this is a song from Illinois, written in 1915 by the great Ralph Chaplin, songwriter, poet, and journalist, and labor organizer. So we'll do a couple verses and a few choruses, so please sing along. If you don't know the melody to this song, you shouldn't be allowed in the room, okay? Here we go. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there is power any greater anywhere beneath the sun. And what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Here we go now, everybody. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold billions that they never toiled to earn. But without our brains and muscle, not a single wheel would turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Again now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. In our hands is placed the power greater than their hoarded gold, greater than the strength of armies magnified 1,000-fold. We can bring to birth a new world on the ashes of the old, 'cause the union makes us strong. Here we go now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity strong. One more chorus now. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.